G'day mates, my name is Mordecai and welcome back to the show, where a new player endeavours to become better at tabletop role-playing games by analysing bad players. Being a new player that is eager to learn, I have watched a small handful of campaigns here on YouTube, namely Critical Role, MCDM, and more recently, Dice Goblins. To me, these shows all share a common similarity, in that they each demonstrate cohesive, collaborative experiences at the table. Each of these can provide different lessons on how to be a good player, but I want to draw a parallel to MCDM for a moment and the idea of the player conspiracy. It's a storytelling method employed by Matthew Colville, where the player and the DM work together to produce a piece of in-game narrative. If anything, this can make the story more engaging to the other players at the table when done correctly. Today's story is about an instance of the player conspiracy not even being remotely attempted and resulting in a bad outcome, as in conducted in a manner such that before I can cover the story proper, I have to give a disclaimer. Actually, it's two disclaimers. Per YouTube guidelines, all discussion of criminal activities in today's video is for educational purposes. All information, such as events and names, have been taken from public sources. If there were faces to censor, they would be censored. This video also includes discussion on anxiety and, to a lesser extent, depression. Yeah, this video is much more on the serious side of the discussion. That being said, let's get to story crunching. Today's story is submitted to us by Fabulously Empty, and is titled, I Had My Data Stolen, by a player who wanted to know the story beforehand. Yeah, you heard the title. This might be a long one, so if that's the case, I'll leave a small version at the bottom. I've been a dungeon master for a long time, and currently I use almost exclusively digital tools to prepare my games, like D&D Beyond, Google Drive, OneNote, etc. It's just a lot more practical for me than pen and paper, especially if you're doing a homebrewed game. We used to play in person before the pandemic, meeting weekly. Nowadays we play online. We're a group of 6 people and we've been friends for almost 10 years. Thus, we have quite some trust between each other. The party members are experienced and one of them usually acts as the self-proclaimed leader. This player in question has, for the last few months, been quite overbearing with the others, especially when they try to decide something. I've tried to cull that behaviour before, but the other players never seem to mind. However, this bugged me, especially since he constantly led them towards choices that would net them the best results, as he would say. He avoided traps, could pinpoint twists, and even was actively suspicious of NPCs that were supposed to be villains, without me even showing any hints of that. Initially, I thought I was just being a bad dungeon master and showing things on my face. Pause the story there. We need to talk about the concept of metagaming, the distant and mostly unrelated cousin of the player conspiracy. Metagaming is broadly defined as the act of using out-of-character knowledge to gain an in-character advantage. Examples include memorizing the stat blocks of various monsters and quoting them in character, even on a bad knowledge check, or, in this instance, already knowing the plot and showing no restraint in exposing the key elements. Metagaming can be a big problem, especially when the player doesn't separate themselves from the character they're playing as. And unlike the player conspiracy method of exposition, there's often no communication between the metagamer and the game master to facilitate it into the narrative. Let's resume the story. But that changed in the last 2 sessions. I had a problem with my internet connection and couldn't access my notes that were stored on Google Drive. Thus, I ended up writing the 2 sessions by pen and paper. Then, during the first of these sessions, his straightforward leadership was nowhere to be seen. He was jittery and very anxious through the microphone. At the time, I thought he was having a bad day, but the next session the same thing happened. This time, however, he asked me how I was planning out our sessions. I answered that I had planned them then beforehand during my lack of connection and did it on an actual notebook. The session went by without any issues, but I still felt a bit strange when he asked me about that. So I decided to have a look at my notes. I didn't realise it before, but the drive in which I keep my session notes had more than just me having access to it. He gave himself access to my Google Drive, and thus could see my notes before every session. My theory is that he'd probably done it whilst we were still playing in person. Let's pause the story for a moment. Oh my. This right here. This is absolutely crossing a line that should not be crossed. This right here is the reason for the first of the two disclaimers. Gaining access to someone else's emails without their permission is definitely an act of theft. Having read the rest of the story prior to this narration, we should all be thankful that it never went beyond merely the plot of the campaign. It cannot be overstated how much damage could have been done by this rather selfish act. It is blatantly criminal. Back to the story. Regardless, I took my laptop to an IT expert and asked him to check everything. The dude had given himself access to pretty much all of my emails and drives. It took 3 hours to be able to deny him that access and to change all of my passwords. Even so, I confronted him after that, saying that what he did was absurd and was borderline criminal by the nature of it. He tried to explain himself, saying his anxiety wasn't letting him have fun when he didn't know the stories beforehand, so he thought I wouldn't mind. It ended up with him blocking me and every other friend on social media, Discords, etc., and essentially disappearing. Now, this was never something I thought would happen. Still, I do hope that that's the end of it. It sucks because I trusted him, and I really didn't think a friend could be this silly over a simple game. In summary, a player used my laptop to give himself access to my emails, Google Drive, and online tools, so he could know the sessions beforehand, and always take the best route possible, getting defensive and disappearing once he was confronted. And that is where the story ends. The problem player here has to be one of the worst metagamers in existence. Now, it could well be fun to memorize the stat blocks of monsters for the purpose of being able to have an out-of-game joke between players. Oh yeah! We're gonna have a meta joke about how much danger we were in fighting that dragon we shouldn't be anywhere near. But there's something about a metagamer having potentially engaged in a real-life criminal activity that sends shivers down my spine. The Game Master had every right to ban and block the metagamer from their table after pulling off that stunt. And to top it off, it's implied that the metagamer didn't talk with anyone about feeling anxious at the table. I have no doubt that there exists a worse instance of metagaming, but I can't think of one. It should go without saying that mental illness is a serious topic, and is actually something I have some experience with. I can only give general advice, but here's the advice that helped me through my own depression. If you feel that you are suffering from anxiety, or any other form of depression, seek help. Talk with people you trust. Let them know how you are feeling. I've provided links in the description of the video to resources that can be used to help. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe and leave a like. It's free to do, and you can change your mind later. If you have any thoughts on this story or feedback on how it can improve, feel free to leave a comment. Again, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you all next time.